What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to talk about the Trial of Sekhemas and the little tips you can use to get through it easily and to potentially farm it for gear. So let's talk about it. So let's just dive right in. Let's talk about the Trial of Sekhemas and what you gain from it and little tips that might help you get through it a little quicker. So the Trial of Sekhemas is in Act 2, right here. And you will attain the access to this when you get to Act 2 the first time through, and the second time through for your, actually will be your third ascendency. You'll see this pop up, and what an ascendancy is, it's going to be a subclass of your starting character, and what it'll allow you to do is specialize into a secondary build and allocate points to it. It opens up a whole nother passive tree. This is not the actual, when you finish the trial, you'll get an option to pick 2 different subclasses, and then from there you'll be able to allocate points into your subclass. Now it gives you 2 points when you finish each trial. So I've done 2 trials so far. I still have the 3rd and the 4th ascendancy to do, but they basically work the same way. They just obviously get increasingly more difficult. So the way this works, once you get this, you can't actually start the Trial of Ascendancy until you get, where are they at? Right here. You'll get these djinn bodies. We'll just call them tokens for now. And what this allows you to do is start the trial. And what will happen is you'll get to the altar, add your relic, or add your token, and this will open up a secondary menu where you'll find these as you're doing the playthrough. These are relics which will change and affect your playthrough for the ascendancy. So as you can see here, there's modifications for life or honor, which we'll get into, and as well as the sacred water. So sacred water is, you'll accumulate this as you go through the trial, and what you could do is spend it as currency at completion, so that you can have these in your relic altar as well to modify how much sacred water you get. But we're going to just break down how to navigate through the trial, and if you're having issues, how you can make it a little simpler on yourself. So before we get into the different rooms that you'll be navigating, let's talk about honor real quick. Honor is basically a health pool created by the trials for you to manage while you run through. It does not replenish itself. There are mechanisms in place where you can regain some honor at the end of each room, and there are also relics that reduce the amount of honor lost when you take damage. But basically this is your health pool that you're going to have to manage and keep from hitting 0 to get to the end of the trial. If it hits 0 at any point, you die and the trial is over. So just keep that in mind as you run through. You have to manage your honor to complete the trial. So what we're going to do first, I'm going to rate the difficulty of each trial room so that as you navigate through the map, you can decide which direction to go if you want to just base it off of difficulty and try and get through it as quick as possible. Again, you got to keep in mind the afflictions that can occur on each one, but a lot of them, especially during the first trial, you won't run into a ton of afflictions. So what we'll do here, the first one I'm going to say is probably the easiest by far, is called Escape. So basically Escape is just a matter of navigating through the room, clicking altars. You don't have to fight, you could just run past everything, and it's pretty straightforward. It tells you which direction the next altar is going to be, so basically all you have to do is run through and click them and keep running. Once you reach the end, it'll say trial complete and you're off to the next room. Okay, the next trial room that I consider the second easiest is the ritual. The ritual is pretty straightforward. All you have to do is kill usually 3 different packs. As you can see, there's a a summons portal there that mobs will come through, but all you have to do is kill the 2 summoners on either side, and that trial room is over. So I feel like this is one of the more straightforward, you don't even have to navigate through. So I would put this at second easiest, just because you have to do a little bit of fighting. Okay, so number 3 on the list is probably going to be Chalice as far as difficulty. This one is, again, pretty straightforward. Unlike Ritual, this one just spawns a rare mob, or up to 3. As you can see, you click the Chalice and it just points in the direction of the rare. This one spawned 1 rare. I've seen up to 3 again, but they're not going to be spawned together. You just have to find and kill each one separately, and once you do that, the trial's over. It is a good one to potentially do if you're doing the trial to farm. Maybe if you're doing this for farm runs, you would pick this one over others, just to potentially get 3 rares to kill. Okay, number 4 on my list is probably going to be Hourglass. This one involves either trying to avoid mobs as much as you can, or just trying to kill. It just basically starts spawning mobs as soon as you hit the hourglass, and it will spawn them for the length of the timer, which it will also involve 1 rare at a time. If you kill it, it spawns another. So you could either just run this. If you're farming, you could just try and spawn as many rares as possible. Or if you're kind of squishy, maybe you want to try and avoid if you can. You could try and run and keep away from the mobs. But this one is number 4 on my list, just because of it can spawn a decent amount of mobs around you, and you want to try and avoid the damage. So I would put this number 4. And last for me is going to be the Gauntlet Trial. I cannot stand this one, and it's because I suck at getting out of the way of things. This is basically just a run through. You don't really have to kill anything. Some things might get in your way, but it's mainly just an avoiding stuff on the ground trial, like those spikes that you have to get out of the way of. I can't stand this one. This is my least favorite. It might be pretty simple for most people. I just suck at avoiding things, so I put this last on my list. It's pretty linear. You just got to hit the levers. It'll kind of move you in the direction you need to go, and you just got to hit the levers and open up doors and continue on. I just can't stand this one, and I'm going to put this as the most difficult on my list. Some people will say this is number 1 for them, but not for me. I hate it. I try and skip it at all costs. Sometimes you can't, but for me, this is the one I try to avoid the most. Now, I'm going to be doing this on a higher character because I wanted to just get through it real quick for the video, but the boss himself is pretty straightforward. It's one of the simpler bosses in the game, in my opinion. Probably one of the easiest bosses in the game. He does a couple of random AoE attacks, but outside of that, it's pretty straightforward. He throws some fire around, but you could burn this guy down on just about every character with ease. So just keep in mind, though, if you fail on this boss and lose all your honor points, the trial is still over and you'll have to start again. So once you completed the boss, you'll come to this room which has a bunch of chests in it. Basically, throughout the trial, you have you could potentially win keys, but you could also spend points on the vendor here. Then the sacred water is going to be the currency that you use to purchase. But you can also convert the sacred water into keys if you have enough of it. But basically, once you get to this room, here's where a lot of people will farm this area, or farm the trial, as long as you have the tokens to run the trial. The chests do drop decent loot relative to your level. Keep that in mind as well. It's like I'm on a higher level character here, so the gear level is not going to be up to what I'm using on this character. But if you're running this at higher difficulty, which I'll show you, you can really get some good stuff here. Also, one thing to keep in mind in the trial, once the trial is started and you go into the first room, you cannot use the teleport. It'll be available. You can use the portal to get out if you want, but you're not going to be able to take the portal back into the trial. Once it's started, you can't stop until you're either completed or you're dead. So don't use the portal unless you want to just end the trial, because you're not going to be able to go back into where you portaled out of. Another thing to keep in mind, once you're playing through and you're into cruel difficulty, you'll be able to access the third ascendancy. And when you get to that point, we'll look at these tokens here and we'll show you the difference. So you'll see here, this one has number of trials 1. This is your starter. This is the first one you'll get. Now this one says number of trials 2. And basically the Trial of Sekhemas is divided into 3 floors. The third ascendancy is on the 3rd floor. So basically what this is for farming. It'll open up the 2nd floor, which is another series of trial rooms, a little more difficult, little variance in the trials themselves, but we won't get into that for now. But it's got a little better loot. You'll see the area level's a little higher, whereas this one's 44. The one with 2 is 52. And it'll give you an option to hit 2 separate chest rooms. So hang on to these if you want to do a little farming and you feel like you're decent at getting through the trials. You can stack up a decent amount of loot just running the trials with the extra tokens and hitting that chest room. Here is where, as you can see, it actually says completing this ascendancy trial will grant additional ascendancy skill points. This is your 3rd ascendancy. Once you get one of these, you can attempt to do the Trial of Sekhemas again, but you have to complete 3 separate trials. So it's not just, you'll do the one pass through, which is the test of strength, and test of will is the 2nd floor. I haven't even tried this yet, so I'm not even sure what the 3rd one's called, but the 2nd test does ramp up in difficulty some, so I'd imagine the 3rd one's going to be pretty hard. I've seen people talk about this. It's not a joke. You need to be ready if you want to attempt that 3rd floor. So, but again, I have a couple of these stacked up. But if you want to farm these for the chests, I would say that it's worth it. And I can imagine once I get high enough level and this becomes a little easier and I've completed the 3rd ascendancy, doing these extra tokens for loot will probably be decent. You could probably get some decent loot out of there. From what I understand, there is some rare loot that only drops in the trials, so keep that in mind as well. Do not toss these tokens once you're done with them. Maybe if you're like in higher, once you've completed campaign and you want to dump some of these lower ones, that's fine. But if you get these 3 trial tokens, definitely hang on to these for doing a little bit of farming anyways. Alright, we're going to leave it here for now. Hopefully that'll be a little help for you guys getting to the trials to get your ascendancy. I by no means am an expert at this, but it's little tips that I've found that maybe make your playthrough on the trial a little simpler. You could potentially run, if you're going to do this on melee, it is going to be a little more difficult because obviously you got to attempt to avoid as much damage as possible, so you can't really face tank anything. But I've seen people respec with like more range type attacks on their melee characters to try and navigate the trial. But again, it's your play style. If you're good at dodging and avoiding hits, then melee's not going to matter. You'll probably be able to get through it pretty easy. But keep that in mind. It's all about not being hit. So if you have the ability to potentially respec a little bit and get some range attacks just to get through the trials, or just try and out level it, gain more levels and come back and do it and get your ascendancy at that point, that's potentially a way to handle it as well. But we'll leave it here for now, and hopefully you can get through the trial and go ahead and get your ascendancy and keep on trucking with the game. But for now, keep on farming.